So once we've got the thesis in place, and remember that any thesis you write is going to change throughout the paper writing process, so you don't have to feel like you're locked into your first draft, but you do want that first draft in place in order to provide the guidance you need to keep your paper on track and on topic. But once we have that rough draft of a thesis in place, it's time to think about and look at the rest of the paper. So here you can see that the thesis is just kind of the most important part, but it's just one part of the entire paper. And here we can see the body of the paper, made up of three main components. So let's take a look at the first one of those. And that's the rhetorical triangle section. So obviously the rhetorical triangle section will address those rhetorical triangle concepts that I covered in the first lecture. And here's how we do that on the paper level. Starting with author, although, like I said in the first lecture, you don't necessarily have to start with author, since all three of the concepts are equivalent or equal. However, starting with author, here are a few questions that you can ask in order to generate some ideas, generate some material for this section. You can use any number of paragraphs. I always encourage my students not to feel confined by the paragraph, because the paragraph, like the sentence, is just a form. And you can have short sentences, you can have very, very long sentences. You can also have short paragraphs, long paragraphs, and more than one. So if your rhetorical triangle section is made up of one paragraph, then that's fine. It can be made up of two, or you can have a paragraph for each of the concepts. It's up to you. It depends on how much you write. In any case, here are some questions that can help you generate an author discussion. And keep in mind the ultimate purpose of the rhetorical triangle when you're writing this section, and that is to provide background information that will be useful later on when you're discussing the rhetorical appeals. And that's why we ask this question about how does the author's background affect his ethos, his or her credibility, and also trying to draw connections between the other two, between author and the other two corners of the triangle. So hopefully this will give you some ideas about something to write about. You'll find something similar in the audience corner of the triangle, or the audience part of the discussion. Decide on the most directly targeted audience, since they're the most important ones, because they're the ones that have been selected by the text for the argument, for the rhetoric. But don't discount other groups. Make sure to have a full discussion of all possible groups, or all the plausible groups that are targeted. And also important, what evidence from the text makes you think that these are the targeted groups? Certain references to things that are important to those groups, word choice. There are a lot of different possibilities, and of course all those, or a lot of that is covered in some of the handouts. And again, drawing the connection between audience and the other two corners of the triangle. And that brings us to the final corner of the triangle, which is purpose. First of all, identify the thesis, if you can. If there's no directly, if there's no direct thesis, at least sum up what you think the main argument of the text is. That's an important place to start. And then think about what the text is trying to achieve. Is the text trying to scare you into doing something? Is the text trying to inform you on an issue you may not know about and then getting you to take action on that issue? There are a lot of possibilities, a lot of different purposes, and that's what you want to address in this part of this section. And finally, always important is how this part of the triangle is connected to the other two, how they all influence each other. And that is your rhetorical triangle section of the paper.